My wedding with Gu Jingchen was set for 3 days later. Everyone in the capital said that I, Shen Xiwei, an orphan girl with no father or mother, being able to marry the young lord of the prestigious Yong'an Marquis Manor was a blessing cultivated over several lifetimes. I once thought so too. I carefully smoothed out the pouch I had personally embroidered over several months. The mandarin ducks on it were lifelike. This was the wedding gift I prepared for him. Every stitch was filled with affection. Walking to the outside of his study before I could knock, I heard the sound of laughter between him and his good friend Zhou Ziheng, the young lord of the Zhengguo Duke Manor. Jingchen, you are about to get married soon. What about that person at the villa in the south of the city? I heard there is already a child, and it is a boy. This would be the eldest son. How are you going to explain this to your wife in the future? My footsteps halted, and all the blood in my body seemed to freeze in an instant. There was a moment of silence inside the room. Then came Gu Jingchen's careless voice, light and airy, yet like a poison-tipped ice spike, stabbing ruthlessly into my heart. Explain. She is just an orphan girl. Being able to sit in the position of my manor's main wife is already an immense blessing. As for that child, just raise him outside. If she knows her place, she should be happy that I am expanding the family line. If she doesn't know her place. I didn't hear what he said after that, nor did I want to hear it. The pouch in my hand burned hot, like a piece of red-hot coal, almost searing through my palm. What I thought was a good match turned out to be nothing but charity in his eyes. What I thought was deep affection and devotion turned out in his heart that I was just a thing who should be grateful to him, someone who should even graciously accept the eldest son born from his mistress. I didn't cry, nor did I barge in to confront him, because I knew when a man looks down on you from the depths of his bones, everything you do is wrong. Making a scene is jealousy. Enduring silently is cowardice. Questioning is making a mountain out of a molehill. I slowly turned around step by step, walking with utmost steadiness. Returning to the courtyard where I temporarily resided, I threw that exquisite pouch into the brazier and also tossed in the wedding dress that I had specially commissioned the best embroiderer in the capital to rush make over 3 months. The flames licked up the gorgeous phoenix feathers, devouring them in an instant, just like my laughable 3 years of deep affection. Since this marriage was a blessing bestowed by him, then this blessing I, Shen Xiwei, no longer want. On the day of the grand wedding, the bridal procession from the Yong'an Marquis Manor lined up from one end of the street to the other, a 10-li red dowry, infinitely glorious. However, the auspicious hour had arrived, yet the bride was still nowhere to be seen. When the manor's steward anxiously burst open my room door with his people, they only saw an empty room and a note left on the vanity table. On it were only 8 characters: marriage annulled, parting in peace. Reportedly, when Gu Jingchen saw the note, he was so furious that he smashed all the furnishings in the room on the spot. A grand wedding banquet became the laughing stock of the entire capital. The Marquis of Yong'an's household lost all face, and everyone was talking about how I, this ungrateful orphan girl, actually dared to flee the marriage. I must be insane. Gu Jingchen publicly claimed that I had suddenly fallen ill and was sent to a country estate to recuperate, forcibly suppressing the scandal. But privately, he dispatched countless people, searching for me like a madman. He probably thought that I, a helpless orphan girl with no one to rely on, couldn't survive without him, and would eventually come crawling back, begging him in tears. He was wrong. Although my parents died early, they left me a massive fortune that no one knew about. Over the years, managed by loyal servants, the trade routes my father left behind had already spread across the land, rivaling the wealth of nations. The reason I always presented myself as an orphan girl was nothing but wishful thinking, hoping to find someone sincere who wouldn't want me for my worldly possessions. Looking back now, how laughable. Taking my personal maid Chinger with me, I quietly left the capital using travel permits and an identity I had prepared long ago. The carriage headed north, leaving behind that prosperous yet hypocritical cage. Miss, are we really just leaving like this? What if people from the Marquise's household catch up? Chinger was full of worry. They won't catch up. I lifted the carriage curtain, watching the scenery rapidly recede. feeling a calmness I had never experienced before. Besides, I am never going back. It is just a pity. Mrs. Sincere Heart for the young lord. I smiled, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. When you fed your heart to the dogs, you have to take it back eventually. From now on, my heart is precious. I'll only give it to those who deserve it. We traveled north all the way, heading straight for Yuzhou at the border. That was where my father once guarded. Far from the emperor's reach, it was a place where I could catch my breath and start anew, however. I still underestimated Gu Jingchen's obsession. Halfway through the journey on a main road, we were stopped by a group of riders. I recognized the man at the front. It was Lai Yan, the captain of Gu Jingchen's personal guards. Miss Shen, the young lord, requests your presence. Lai Yan's face was expressionless, but his tone carried an unyielding firmness that brooked no refusal. I sat composed inside the carriage, my voice passing through the curtain, cold as frost. I am no longer Miss Shen, and I have nothing to do with your young lord anymore. Please make way. Li Yan clearly hadn't expected this attitude from me. He frowned and said, Miss Shen, the young lord is showing you respect by asking you to return. The young lord said that as long as you go back, you will still be the future mistress of the Marquis Manor. Respect, I laughed coldly. Gu Jingchen, fathered an eldest son with another woman before our wedding, trampling my dignity as his fiancée into the ground, and now he has the nerve to talk to me about respect. Go back and tell him his blessings are too great for me, Shen Xiwei, to bear. Let him hold his eldest son and his true love, and live his life. Well, Li Yan's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Clearly Gu Jingchen hadn't informed them about this matter. Miss Shen, please don't make things difficult for this subordinate. His hand was already on the blade at his waist. The guards beside me immediately stepped forward, surrounding the carriage in the middle. These were all old subordinates left by my father, each one with exceptional skills. What? Gu Jingchen can't find anyone, so he is resorting to force. Is this how a prestigious marquis household conducts itself? I spoke with sarcasm. Just as swords were drawn and bows were bent, a steady and powerful sound of horse hooves approached from afar. A troop of black armored cavalry escorting a black carriage came riding in the glow of the setting sun. The procession exuded a solemn aura, carrying an iron-blooded presence of those who had long weathered battlefields, making Li Yan and his men involuntarily tense up. The black carriage stopped beside my convoy. The curtain was lifted by a hand with distinct knuckles, wearing a dark jade thumb ring, revealing a handsome and resolute face. The man appeared to be around 27 or 28 years old, with a pair of phoenix eyes deep as an abyss. A casual sweep of his gaze made Li Yan and the others feel as if plunged into an icy pit. Most striking was a faint scar on his left brow bone, which not only didn't mar his handsomeness, but instead added a touch of fierce intensity. It was him, the current emperor's own brother, the Prince of Jing, who commands 300,000 troops of Great Zhou Shaoyuan. Rumor has it he was severely wounded on the northern battlefield 3 years ago, half his face ruined, and remains unmarried to this day. Why is he here? This humble servant greets His Highness, the Prince of Jing. The moment Li Yan saw Shaoyuan, his face turned pale as he hurriedly knelt to pay respects. Shaoyuan's gaze paused on my face for an instant, then turned to Li Yan, his voice cold as ice shards. People of the Yong'an Marquis Manor gathering here to rob travelers. This humble servant wouldn't dare. Li Yan was scared out of his wits. This humble servant is here on the young master's orders, to bring back the young master's fiancée. Shaoyuan's tone rose slightly at the end, carrying a hint of amusement. How come this prince heard that the young madam of the Yong'an Marquis Manor died of illness on the very day of her wedding? Li Yan prostrated on the ground, cold sweat streaming down, not daring to raise his head. Shaoyuan ignored him and let his gaze fall back on me. Those calm eyes seemed capable of seeing through one's heart. You are Shen Xiwei? I steadied myself and curtsied. This commoner woman, Shen Xiwei, greets your highness. An orphan girl fleeing her marriage, quite the nerve. He scrutinized me, his tone revealing neither pleasure nor anger. I met his gaze, neither humble nor arrogant. This commoner woman simply doesn't want to live as a joke. A flash of surprise passed through Xiaoyuan's eyes. Then the corner of his lips curved into a faint arc. Interesting, since you don't want to be his heir's consort. Xiaoyuan paused. Then would you be willing to become this king's princess consort? Dead silence all around. Li Yan raised his head in shock, his face full of disbelief, and even Chinger beside me gasped sharply. I was stunned. Princess consort of Prince Jing. This status was 100 times higher than that of a marquis heir's consort. Your Highness! Why? This king needs a princess consort to shut up those old fogies in the court. His words were concise, his tone as calm as if discussing the weather. And you need a powerful backer, so that Gu Jingchen and the Yong'an Marquis Manor will never dare touch you again. This was a transaction where each party gets what they need. I understood. Perhaps he valued my clean background, perhaps he simply found it amusing, or perhaps he wanted to use this to slap the Yong'an Marquis Manor in the face. The Yong'an Marquis was the Crown Prince's grand tutor, a core figure of the Crown Prince's faction, and Xiaoyuan had always been at odds with the Crown Prince. In just a brief moment, my mind had already turned 1,000 times. Marrying him, I would completely escape Gu Jingchen's entanglement and gain the most secure protection. But at the same time, I would also be drawn into deeper court intrigues. But did I still have a choice? Looking at Li Yan, who was eyeing me like a predator, I knew that without Xiaoyuan today, I couldn't leave at all. Gu Jingchen's obsession would only make my future path more difficult. Rather than passively waiting for unknown risks, it is better to actively seize the opportunity before me. I took a deep breath, meeting Xiaoyuan's scrutinizing gaze, and slowly knelt down. This commoner, Shen Xiwei, is willing to marry the prince. I only ask one thing of the prince in this life. I want only the prince alone. If the prince has a beloved in the future, Xiwei is willing to voluntarily step down and will never cling on. This is my bottom line. I will never repeat the same mistake of sharing a husband with another woman. A hint of amusement flashed in Xiaoyuan's eyes. He let out a low chuckle, the laughter deep and pleasant. Granted, this prince in this life will also have no other woman. He addressed the guards behind him. Go tell the Yong'an Marquis Manor that Miss Shen is now this prince's future princess consort. Tell them to keep their hands to themselves. If they reach out even an inch further, this prince won't mind chopping them off. Yes, Lian's face turned ashen, and he retreated in disgrace with his men. Xiaoyuan's gaze fell on me once more. Get in the carriage, princess consort. My remarriage turned out to be such a dramatic union with Xiaoyuan. The wedding was arranged quickly, yet it was anything but low-key. Xiaoyuan brought me directly back to the Prince Jing's manor in the capital. 3 days later, with ceremonial rites second only to an empress, I was carried through the manor gates in an 8-man palanquin. The entire capital was in an uproar. That runaway bride, the madwoman Shen Xiwei, had suddenly become the wife of Prince Jie Feng, who held power over the court. This was more bizarre than any storybook. I could imagine what kind of expression Jie Feng would have when the news reached the Jie Feng Marquis Manor. On the wedding night, red candles burned bright. Jie Fein pushed the door open and entered. He had already changed out of his elaborate ceremonial robes into a simple black everyday outfit. That scar flickered in and out of view under the candlelight, adding a touch of mystery. He walked up to me and personally lifted my bridal veil. Our eyes met. His deep, dark pupils reflected the dancing candlelight, as well as my calm, unruffled face. "Any regrets?" he asked. I shook my head. "No regrets. This was my own choice." "Good." He handed me a cup of wedding wine. "From today on, you are the mistress of this Prince Jie Feng's manor. Everything in the manor is yours to command. No one will dare to wrong you, including this prince." I took the cup, and we drank with arms intertwined. The sharp liquor slid down my throat, yet my mind remained crystal clear. I knew our marriage began as a transaction, but I would fulfill everything a princess consort should do. On the 3rd day after our wedding, I was to enter the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager and the Empress as was customary. Shifei Yu Fein accompanied me. On our way to the Palace of Compassion and Tranquility, we came face to face with Crown Prince Xiwei, O'Shea and Ji Fei Jie Fei Jie. Gu Jingchen was dressed in the court attire of a marquise's heir, his figure still tall and straight, his features still handsome, only now a lingering gloom shrouded his brow. When he saw me holding Xiaoyuan's arm, when he saw the formal princess consort dress I was wearing, embroidered with phoenix patterns in gold thread, his pupils suddenly contracted, and all color drained from his face. Those eyes that once gazed at me with such tenderness were now filled with shock, pain, unwillingness, and a trace of betrayed anger, as if I were the one who had broken faith. I found it utterly laughable. Royal uncle, royal aunt. Crown Prince Xiaocheng wore a gentle smile on his face and bowed first. Xiaoyuan responded with an indifferent acknowledgement. My gaze didn't linger on Gu Jingchen for even a second. I simply curtsied slightly along with Xiaoyuan toward the Crown Prince. Greetings to your highness, the Crown Prince. My voice was calm and emotionless, as if looking at a stranger. Gu Jingchen's body went rigid. He stared at me fixedly, his lips trembling, as if wanting to say something. Young Lord Jiao Yuan's icy voice rang out. Upon seeing this prince and the princess consort, do you not know to pay your respects? Or perhaps the etiquette of the Yong'an Marquis Manor has all gone to the dogs. Gu Jingchen's face went pale, and only then did he snap out of it, as if waking from a dream, bowing with humiliation. This subject, Gu Jingchen, greets His Highness. Prince Jing greets Her Highness the Princess Consort. The last 4 words he practically squeezed out through gritted teeth. I accepted his bow calmly, my heart unmoved. Let's go. Xiaoyuan wrapped his arm around my waist, not even bothering to spare them another glance, and walked past them with me in his arms. In that instant, as we brushed past each other, I heard Gu Jingchen's suppressed voice sound beside my ear. Shen Xiwei, are you truly this heartless? My steps didn't pause. I didn't even turn my head. Heartless. When he was being all lovey-dovey with another woman before our wedding, had a child with her, and still thought giving me the position of legitimate wife was a favor, did he ever think about how heartless he was? Some things, once shattered, can never be pieced back together. The days as Princess Consort Jing were more peaceful than I had imagined. Xiaoyuan was a very busy man, leaving early and returning late every day, so we didn't see each other much. But he kept his promise, giving me all the honor and power befitting a princess consort. The servants in the manor were respectful and deferential to me. All affairs of the inner household were under my control, and he even gave me the keys to his private treasury. The rare treasures inside could rival a nation's wealth. He said, "You are this prince's consort. Everything of this prince's is everything of yours." I began learning to manage the affairs of the prince's estate. I quietly consolidated the business methods my mother taught me with the trade routes and connections my father left behind. I discovered that although Xiaoyuan's enterprises were vast, the management was rather rough, so I wrote some proposals for improvement and anonymously placed them on his desk. He didn't ask anything, but the next day, those proposals were distributed. A peculiar understanding formed between us. We were the most intimate of couples, yet also the most distant of allies. Such days continued until a palace banquet arrived. At the banquet, I saw Gu Jingchen again. He brought with him a graceful woman with delicate features, and in her arms was a boy of about 2 years old. I recognized her Lu Ruye, Gu Jingchen's distant cousin. At this moment, she was leaning against Gu Jingchen with a fragile expression, her gaze toward me full of provocation and showing off, as if saying, "Look, so what if you've become a princess consort? Gu Jingchen's heart and his firstborn son are both with me." I only found it absurd. She seemed to have forgotten that I was the one who actively abandoned Gu Jingchen. Yet Gu Jingchen's gaze remained fixed on me, that gaze incomparably complex, carrying regret, carrying unwillingness, and a kind of deep affection I couldn't understand, as if he was deeply in love with me, and I was the heartless one. Halfway through the banquet, I went to freshen up, with Chinger standing guard outside. Unexpectedly, at the corner of the corridor, Gu Jingchen blocked my path. He called my name with a hoarse voice, his eyes bloodshot. "Let's talk. I have nothing to talk about with young Master Gu." I coldly tried to walk around him, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. Why wouldn't you wait for my explanation? Why did you marry someone else so quickly? Do you hate me that much?" "Let go," I struggled, his touch making me physically nauseous. "I won't." He looked at me stubbornly, tears actually welling up in his eyes. "Where? I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have hidden it from you. But what happened between Yue and me was just an accident. That child, I never intended for him to affect you. You've always been the only one in my heart. Will you come back? As long as you come back, I'll send them away immediately." Mother and son, and we can be like before. His deeply affectionate self-pity only made me want to laugh. "Gu Jingchen." I forcefully shook off his hand and looked at him coldly. "Have you forgotten what you once said, that an orphan girl like me should consider it a blessing to be your legitimate wife?" "What, now that I am saying I don't want this blessing anymore, you suddenly think it is precious?" My words were like a knife, stabbing deep into his heart. His face instantly turned pale as paper. I was just saying angry words to Zai back then. He defended himself in vain. Angry words! My smile turned even colder. "Was your firstborn also born from angry words, Gu Jingchen? Put away your pathetic affection. You don't love me, you only love the Shen Xiwei, who obeyed your every word and treated you like a god. You can't accept my leaving, not because you love me so much, but because your pride and possessiveness have been challenged. I am now Princess Jing, and there is no possibility between us anymore. Have some self-respect, and stop coming to disgust me." I turned to leave after speaking, but he held me tightly from behind. "I don't believe it. I don't believe you have no feelings for me anymore. You married Prince Jing just to get back at me, didn't you? Where, look at me, tell me, do you love him?" A cold-blooded, ruthless man covered in killing aura with a scar on his face, how could you possibly love him? His words were filled with jealousy and madness. I was trembling with rage, about to scold him, when a voice colder than the winter wind in the 12th month sounded above my head. "Let go of her." It was Xiaoyuan. He didn't know when he had appeared behind us, but those phoenix eyes held no warmth at this moment, only piercing, killing intent. The black-armored guards behind him had already half drawn their swords, the cold gleam of the blades turning Gu Jingchen's face deathly pale. "This king's princess, do you think you are allowed to touch her?" Xiaoyuan walked over step by step. Each step felt like it was stomping on Gu Jingchen's heart. He reached out and pried open Gu Jingchen's fingers that were gripping me tightly, one by one, pulling me into his embrace. His embrace was very warm, carrying a faint scent of ambergris, instantly putting me at ease, Your Highness. I looked up at him. He didn't look at me, just stared at Gu Jingchen, his gaze as if looking at a dead man. "Gu Jingchen, it seems you didn't remember the lesson from last time." "Your Highness, I just wanted to have a few words with Wire. There is some misunderstanding between us." Under Xiaoyuan's overwhelming aura, Gu Jingchen's voice was trembling. "Misunderstanding?" Xiaoyuan sneered. "This prince's consort personally told this prince that it was you who had illicit affairs before marriage, secretly got her pregnant, and drove her into a corner. Is that also a misunderstanding?" Gu Jingchen's face went completely pale. He didn't expect I would tell Xiaoyuan about such things. It seems the Yong'an Marquis Manor has been too idle. Xiaoyuan held me and turned to leave, leaving only a cold remark. "Zhao Feng, relay this prince's order. The Yong'an Marquis has failed to discipline his son and lacks moral integrity. Order the Ministry of Personnel to thoroughly investigate his disciples and associates. Anyone found guilty of corruption and abuse of power shall be investigated to the end." As for young Lord Gu, he paused, turned his head slightly, his peripheral gaze sweeping over Gu Jingchen, ice-cold and bone-piercing. For offending the princess consort and speaking disrespectfully, drag him away and slap him 50 times. "No, Your Highness, you can't." Gu Jingchen's cry of alarm was muffled by the guards covering his mouth. Soon, clear and loud slapping sounds came from the end of the corridor, one after another, as if paying tribute to my foolish past. I leaned in Xiaoyuan's arms, listening to those sounds without a ripple in my heart. Feel better now? He lowered his head and asked me. I nodded, but he sighed and held me tighter. If you encounter something like this in the future, just have someone hit back directly. You are this prince's consort. In the capital, except for the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, no one can make you suffer any grievance. My heart, at that moment, uncontrollably skipped a beat. After that night, Gu Jingchen seemed to have vanished from the capital. I heard he was beaten beyond recognition by Xiaoyuan's men and was confined to his residence to recover, not going out for a long time. The Yong'an Marquis Manor, meanwhile, fell into great trouble because of a single word from Xiaoyuan. The censors from the Ministry of Personnel and the censorate, like sharks smelling blood, investigated the officials of the Marquise's faction thoroughly. For a while, everyone in the court felt endangered. The Yong'an Marquis was overwhelmed, and his several attempts to seek an audience with Xiaoyuan were all turned away. But the relationship between Xiaoyuan and me underwent a subtle change after that night. He was no longer just my ally and backer. He would quietly pick out the ginger slices I didn't like from my bowl. When I worked on the manor's accounts until late at night, he would silently drape a coat over my shoulders and bring me a steaming bowl of lotus seed soup. When I felt down because of the past, he would clumsily stay by my side, saying nothing, just quietly being there. This Prince Jing, seen by outsiders as cold-blooded and ruthless, had given all his tenderness and patience to me. Me heart, like a frozen lake, was gradually thawed by his warmth. I began to reciprocate his kindness. I would leave a lamp lit and a bowl of hot tea for him when he came home late. I would sew clothes for him with my own hands according to his preferences. I would remember his birthday and arrange a feast that belonged only to the two of us. Between us, we became more and more like a real couple, until one day I accidentally discovered a hidden compartment in his study. Inside the compartment, there was no gold or jewelry, no confidential documents, only a painting. The painting showed a 7 or 8-year-old girl, wearing a dress washed so many times it had faded white, squatting on the ground, carefully bandaging a wounded kitten. Sunlight filtered through the leaves onto her, warm and focused. That little girl was clearly me as a child. Me head buzzed. Where did he get this painting from? That night, when Xiaoyuan came back, I showed him the painting. He froze when he saw it, and a flash of unease crossed his face. "What is this?" I asked softly. He was silent for a long time before sighing and pulling me into his arms to sit. "Do you remember? 20 years ago, outside Yuzhou City, there was a boy surrounded by wolves." My memory was instantly pulled back to the distant past. When my father was still alive, we lived in Yuzhou. When I was 7, I followed Uncle Zhang up the mountain to gather herbs and saved a blood-covered boy surrounded by several hungry wolves. The boy looked about 13 or 14, extremely good-looking, but was covered in dirt and blood. The way he looked at me was full of wariness and ferocity, like an injured wolf pup. I wasn't afraid of him. I had Uncle Zhang chase away the wolves, then used the rudimentary medical skills I had just learned to bandage his wounds. I also gave him the only piece of malt candy I had on me. "Eat it. Once you eat the candy, the wound won't hurt anymore," I said to him in my little childish voice. He stared at me blankly for a long time before accepting the candy. Later, his family found him and took him away. I never saw him again. I always thought it was just an insignificant episode from my childhood. That boy was you. I looked at Xiaoyuan in disbelief. Xiaoyuan nodded, his eyes carrying a tenderness and nostalgia I had never seen before. That year, I was framed by my brothers in the palace and hunted down to Yuzhou, nearly losing my life. It was you who saved me. He stroked my hair, his voice low. "I asked for your name back then, and you said you were called Weiwei. I remembered it after I returned to the palace. It took me a long time to gain a foothold. When I went back to Yuzhou to find you, the Shen family had already met with misfortune, and you were nowhere to be found. I searched for you for many years. This painting, I drew it from memory. I was afraid that as time passed, I would forget what you looked like." My heart was wrapped in immense shock, aching and swelling, as something threatened to surge from my eyes. So the fate between us had begun that long ago. So he had been searching for me all these years. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, choking up. I was afraid of scaring you, he smiled bitterly. When I found you, you were about to marry Gu Jingchen, I had thought. As long as you were happy, I would secretly protect you for the rest of your life. But I never expected that he would treat you like that. When we met again on the official road, when I said I wanted to marry you, half of it was a deal and half was selfish desire. I was afraid if I missed you again, I would truly lose you forever. Wei Wei, he cupped my face, looking at me with utmost sincerity. I adore you. From 20 years ago when you gave me that piece of candy, it has always been so. Tears finally broke through the dam. I threw myself into his arms and cried my heart out. I cried for the 3 years of youth I wasted on the wrong person, cried for my stupidity in misjudging people, and cried for my luck in regaining what I had lost. So heaven wasn't being harsh to me after all, it was simply saving the best for last. Xiaoyuan and I finally became a real husband and wife. After that barrier between us was broken, our feelings grew by leaps and bounds. He no longer hid his affection for me, and I wholeheartedly relied on him and loved him. People in the capital all said that since Prince Jing married his princess, the murderous aura around him had lessened considerably, and his whole demeanor had softened. And under his doting, I gradually revealed my true edge. I was no longer just Princess Jing. Using the wealth and connections my parents left behind, I opened the largest silk shop, grain store, and money house in the capital. Business thrived, and soon I controlled nearly half of the capital's economic lifeline. I also established a charity hall, taking in orphans and teaching them to read and write, giving them practical skills. People no longer called me an orphan girl who could only shine because of Prince Jing. They called me Boss Shen, renowned for her benevolence, an extraordinary woman whose plans never failed. I had my own radiance, and all of this was inseparable from Xiaoyuan's support behind me. No matter what I did, he trusted and supported me unconditionally, he said. My princess was always meant to be the most dazzling star in the sky. Days passed peacefully and happily, until one day news came from the palace. The crown prince had mismanaged state affairs during his regency, causing the Yellow River to breach its dikes and leaving countless people homeless, and the disaster relief funds allocated by the court had been embezzled layer by layer. Vanishing without a trace, the emperor was furious and ordered a thorough investigation. All the clues ultimately pointed to the crown prince's faction and the Yong'an Marquis Manor. As it turned out, the Yong'an Marquis had been using his authority all these years to open doors for his cronies, accepting bribes and perverting the law, forming cliques for personal gain, having already hollowed out half the court. And the repairs of the Yellow River dikes were originally the Yong'an Marquis's responsibility. He had pocketed most of the silver for himself, which led to today's catastrophic disaster. Witnesses and evidence were all present, an ironclad case solid as a mountain. The crown prince was deposed and confined in the imperial clan court. The entire Yong'an Marquis Manor was sentenced to execution. When the news arrived, I was in the courtyard looking at my newly planted flowers. Qinger was beside me, reading the news from the capital daily, her voice full of satisfaction. I listened, but my heart was calm. On the day of the property confiscation, the entire capital emptied out to watch. I didn't go. I didn't want to see those people again. However, though I didn't want to see them, someone insisted that I do. The day before the execution, Gu Jingchen somehow managed to bribe the jailer and requested to see me one last time. Xiaoyuan asked what I wanted. I thought about it and said, I'll see him. Why wouldn't I? It is time to put an end to things. The place I met him was in the side hall of the prince's manor. He was wearing prison clothes, shackled at the wrists and ankles, and was escorted in by guards. In just a few months, he seemed like a completely different person. The handsome and spirited man he once was had vanished. He looked haggard, eyes sunken, hair mostly white. He appeared even older than Xiaoyuan. When he saw me, a faint glimmer of light finally appeared in those lifeless eyes. Where? He spoke hoarsely, his voice sounding like it had been scraped with sandpaper. I sat in the main seat, holding a teacup, looking at him indifferently. Young Master Gu. That one young Master Gu made his whole body tremble. He smiled bitterly, his laughter full of despair. Princess Consort. I was wrong. I was wrong from the very beginning. I shouldn't have been so arrogant. Shouldn't have looked down on your sincere feelings. Shouldn't have assumed you would always wait for me in the same place. I always thought you loved me so much, you'd lost yourself, that you couldn't live without me. It wasn't until you left without looking back, until you married Prince Jing, until you became more dazzling than me, more dazzling than everyone, that I finally understood just how terribly wrong I was. I lost the most precious treasure in the world, yet treated a venomous snake of a woman like a treasure. Liu Ruya. Haha. She approached me from the start just for the wealth of the marquise's household. The moment something happened to our family, she was the first to grab the valuables and try to run. And she even wanted to sell off my son. He spoke as if telling a joke that had nothing to do with himself, yet that laughter sounded worse than crying. Where he suddenly lifted his head, looking at me with bloodshot eyes, and dropped to his knees. I know, I deserve death 1,000 times over. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I only beg you, for the sake of our past acquaintance, save my family. They're innocent. My father. He was also blinded by greed. I listened to him quietly until he finished, then set down the teacup, Gu Jingchen. I said, word by word. The yellow river burst its banks. Tens of thousands of common people lost their homes and families. Displaced and homeless, were they not innocent? When your father embezzled treasury silver and treated lives like grass, did he ever think they were innocent? When you enjoyed that blood-stained wealth, keeping a mistress without guilt and fathering an eldest son, thinking that giving me the title of legal wife was already a favor, did you ever think that I, too, was innocent? Your wealth and status were built on countless corpses and my dignity. Now, retribution has come, and you come begging me to save those butchers. My words were like swords, stripping away his last shred of hope and dignity. He collapsed onto the ground, his face ashen, unable to utter a single word. Even now, you are still thinking of having me run around for your family. Gu Jingchen, you truly never really knew me. Deep down, you still think I Shen Xiwei am that orphan girl you can manipulate at will. I stood up and looked down at him from above. I came to see you today not to hear your confession, nor to watch you make a fool of yourself. I just want to tell you one thing. I touched my slightly swollen belly, and the most genuine, most tender smile I'd had in all this time appeared on my face. I am pregnant. It is the prince's child. Gu Jingchen abruptly raised his head, and the last glimmer of light in those eyes was completely extinguished. He stared at my belly, at the happy smile on my face, his gaze shifting from shock to pain to jealousy, and finally only endless despair remained. My life has turned to a new chapter there. I have a husband who loves me, our soon-to-be-born child, and a bright and splendid future. As for you and your past, to me, you are nothing more than a speck of dust long since brushed away. Take care of yourself. Young Master Gu turned and left, never looking back. Behind me came his uncontrollable howls and sobs, like a trapped beast. Xiaoyuan was waiting for me at the entrance. He walked forward, took off his cloak, and wrapped me into his embrace. It is all over, he said softly. I leaned into his warm embrace and nodded. It is all over. The next day, the entire Yong'an Marquis household was executed. I heard that at the execution ground, Gu Jingchen kept kowtowing toward the direction of Prince Jing's residence, murmuring my name under his breath, until the very last moment. Half a year later, I gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. Xiaoyuan held the children, grinning like a fool. He named his son Xiaonianan and his daughter Xiaomue. He said, "May I protect my peace for a lifetime," and he would forever adore Shen Xiwei. I looked at his handsome profile, at the adorable children in his arms, and felt warmth and peace in my heart. I once thought my life was a tragedy, opening with betrayal and abandonment. Yet unexpectedly, Fate had already buried a piece of candy for me on that distant afternoon long ago. That candy, having weathered 20 years of hardship, finally gave me a whole spring's worth of sweetness.